Look down at your hands for a moment. They feel real. They look real. They seem unquestionably yours. But what if the sense of you, that is experiencing them, the person who believes they are looking out at the world from inside a body, is not what it feels like at all? What if the most intimate thing you have ever known, your thoughts, your memories, your emotions, your very sense of being someone, is not a direct window into reality, but a carefully constructed story your brain is telling itself in order to keep you alive? Every second, your brain is flooded with incomplete, noisy, ambiguous signals, light, sound, pressure, temperature, fragments of data that on their own mean almost nothing. And yet, from this chaos, your brain generates a seamless, stable, meaningful world. A world with colors, objects, faces, voices, and most importantly, a world with a central character called me. Your mind does not sit quietly behind your eyes, waiting for the world to present itself like a finished picture. It does not receive reality the way a camera receives light. It does not function as a passive observer. It is an active builder, a constant generator, a biological prediction engine that never stops guessing what is out there and who you are within it. Every moment you believe you are seeing the world directly, you are actually experiencing a carefully assembled interpretation that has been constructed inside your nervous system long before awareness arrives. Light strikes your retinas, but color does not exist in that light. There are no blues, no reds, no warmth, no depth embedded in the photons entering your eyes. Those signals are nothing more than electrical fluctuations, blind, meaningless pulses that carry no story within themselves. Sound waves compress air, but they do not contain voices, melodies, or words. They are merely vibrations. Touch is only pressure. Smell is only chemical contact. And yet, from this raw and indifferent data, your brain produces a living, breathing, emotionally charged world. It creates objects with edges, faces with expressions, voices with intentions, and spaces filled with meaning. What you call reality is already the brain's answer to a question you never knew it was asking. The brain does not wait to be informed. It predicts, it anticipates, it models. Long before sensory information arrives, your nervous system has already prepared a version of the world it expects to encounter. Incoming data does not build perception from scratch. It merely corrects and adjusts a story that is already in motion. You are not seeing what is there. You are seeing what your brain thinks is there, constrained slightly by what your senses report. This is why two people can stand in the same place, hear the same words, and walk away with entirely different realities. One hears threat, another hears concern, one sees rejection, another sees indifference. The world outside has not changed, but the internal models that interpret it are profoundly different. The mind projects meaning outward, then experiences that projection as if it were an objective fact. Your emotional life reveals this process more clearly than anything else. Fear does not arise because danger is detected. Fear arises because your brain predicts danger. Sadness does not occur because loss has been measured. It occurs because your nervous system forecasts separation, disconnection, or threat to your internal narrative of who you are. Anger is not simply a reaction, it is a biological expectation that something important has been violated. Your feelings are not reactions to reality. They are the brain's predictions shaping what reality becomes for you. Even time itself is constructed. The past you remember is not stored like a recording. It is rebuilt each time you recall it, influenced by who you are now, what you expect now, and what you fear now. The future you imagine is not an empty space waiting to arrive. It is already being rehearsed, simulated, and emotionally pre-experienced inside your nervous system. You live inside a continuously updated forecast. What feels like the present moment is not a thin line moving forward through time. It is a thick, layered construction made from memory, prediction, and sensory correction, all happening at once. You are not located in time the way you think you are. You are located inside a narrative your brain keeps alive in order to guide your survival. This is why the world feels stable even though your eyes jump several times every second, even though your body is constantly in motion, even though sensory input is fragmented and incomplete. Your brain fills the gaps, it smooths the edges, it invents continuity. It protects you from chaos by hiding the raw uncertainty of reality behind a convincing illusion of order. This is not a flaw. It is the very reason you can function. A brain that waited for perfect information would never make a decision. A nervous system that refused to guess would be paralyzed by ambiguity. You survive not because you perceive truth, but because you generate useful interpretations. Your mind is not designed to show you reality. It is designed to keep you alive. And because survival depends on speed rather than accuracy, your internal model of the world is biased, simplified, emotionally charged, and deeply personal. You see what matters to you. You hear what confirms your expectations. You notice what fits your internal story and ignore what does not. Reality becomes filtered through the invisible architecture of your predictions. This is why habits are so powerful. Repeated experiences shape the brain's expectations. Expectations shape perception. Perception reinforces belief. And belief quietly becomes the world you think you live in. Over time, your nervous system becomes more efficient at predicting a version of reality that feels familiar, even when that version is limiting, painful, or distorted. This is also why change feels threatening. New information is not simply new information. It challenges the brain's internal model. It threatens the stability of the narrative that defines who you are. And because your sense of self is woven into your predictions about the world, changing your beliefs can feel like losing your identity. You do not simply hold opinions. You inhabit them. They are built into your perception, your emotional reflexes, your sense of safety, and your definition of what feels real. The mind protects its models because it experiences them as survival itself. When you say, "This is how things are," what you are often describing is not the world. You are describing your brain's current best guess about the world. A guess shaped by biology, memory, emotion culture, and personal history. And because that guess feels immediate and immersive, it becomes nearly indistinguishable from truth. You are not standing outside of this process. You are inside it. You are the story being generated. You are the predictions being tested. You are the emotional signals shaping the forecast. You are both the observer and the construction, simultaneously creating and experiencing the reality you believe you are reacting to. The world you live in is not merely out there. It is being assembled moment by moment inside your nervous system, negotiated between expectation and sensation, emotion and memory, survival and meaning. And what you experience as reality is the final draft of that invisible negotiation, delivered to your awareness as if it were simply the way things are. The self does not arrive fully formed at birth, and it does not exist as a solid object hidden somewhere inside the brain. There is no single place you could point to and say, this is where you live. What feels like a unified, permanent identity is in fact a living process, continuously assembled by the nervous system to maintain coherence, continuity, and control. The self is not something you have. It is something your brain is doing. From the moment you open your eyes in the morning, your brain is already predicting who you are. It predicts how your body should feel, what emotions belong to you, what memories should be accessible, what fears are relevant, what goals are important. It constructs a personal model of the organism it is responsible for regulating. That model becomes your sense of being someone rather than something. Your heartbeat, your breathing, your temperature, your hunger, your fatigue, your pain, your pleasure are not merely bodily signals rising into awareness. They are interpreted, categorized, and given personal meaning. A tightening in the chest becomes anxiety. A drop in energy becomes sadness. A surge of warmth becomes affection. These are not raw sensations. They are predictions layered with narrative, turning biology into identity. Your name, your history, your preferences, your values, your ambitions are not static properties. They are patterns of expectation your brain uses to predict your own future behavior. The self is a model the brain uses to control the body in the world. It tells your nervous system what kind of organism it is managing and what kinds of situations matter. This is why your identity feels stable, even though almost everything about you is constantly changing. Your cells renew, your beliefs evolve. Your memories fade, distort, and reassemble. Your personality shifts with age, stress, love, loss, and learning. And yet, There is a continuous sense of me. That continuity is not a preserved object. It is a story that is constantly being updated while maintaining its central character. When you say, I am this kind of person, you are not describing a fixed entity. You are describing a predictive model your brain has learned to run efficiently. It expects you to react in certain ways, to prefer certain things, to avoid certain risks, to pursue certain rewards. Those expectations guide your attention, shape your emotions, and bias your decisions before you are even aware that a choice is being made. Your sense of agency also emerges from this model. The feeling that you are choosing, deciding, and acting does not require a central controller. It arises when the brain's predictions about your actions match the sensory consequences that follow. When the prediction aligns with the outcome, the experience is labeled as, I did that. Agency is the brain recognizing the success of its own forecast. The boundary you feel between you and the world is not physically sharp, it is perceptual. Your skin marks the biological edge of your body, but your sense of self extends far beyond it. Your phone feels like an extension of your memory. Your home feels like an extension of your safety. Your loved ones feel like extensions of your emotional regulation. Your brain includes external resources inside its self model because they help maintain stability and predictability. When those external supports are threatened, your sense of self feels threatened. Loss does not only hurt because something is gone. It hurts because a part of your predictive world has collapsed. The brain must rebuild its model of who you are in a reality that no longer fits its expectations. Grief is not only emotional pain, it is the nervous system struggling to update its identity model. This also explains why insults sting, why rejection destabilizes, why social belonging feels essential. Your self-model is shaped by relationships. Other people help define who you are by confirming or challenging the story your brain is telling. You are not an isolated self. You are a socially stabilized prediction. Your internal dialogue is another layer of this construction. The voice you hear in your mind is not a separate entity. It is the narrative channel your brain uses to negotiate goals, fears, and actions. It turns silent biological processes into language so they can be evaluated, rehearsed, and revised. The inner voice feels like you talking to yourself, but it is the system maintaining and updating the self-model in real time. The self also depends on memory, but not in the way you might expect. Memory is not a storage of who you were. It is a toolbox your brain uses to predict who you will be. Past experiences are reassembled into patterns that guide future behavior. The self is future-oriented. It exists to reduce uncertainty about what you will do next and how the world will respond. This is why trauma can reshape identity. When the brain learns that the world is dangerous, unpredictable, or uncontrollable, it updates its self-model accordingly. You become more vigilant, more defensive, more withdrawn, more reactive. These changes do not feel like new strategies. They feel like a new you. The same is true of healing. When safety, trust, and stability return, the self-model updates again. New versions of you emerge, not because a core self has been repaired, but because the predictive story has been rewritten. You are not a thing traveling through time. You are a process unfolding through predictions, corrections, connections, and narratives. Your sense of being a stable person is the brain maintaining coherence in the face of constant change. It is not lying to you. It is doing exactly what it evolved to do. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that the self you feel so certain about is not a permanent essence. It is a dynamic biological story, written moment by moment, shaped by your body, your memories, your relationships, and your expectations, generating the experience of being someone rather than simply existing. Every conscious moment you experience feels like a faithful reflection of the world around you, as though your mind were opening a clear window onto reality. You trust what you see, hear, feel, and think because it arrives with an effortless immediacy that suggests truth. But beneath that smooth surface, your nervous system is not recording reality. It is actively inventing it in a way that keeps your body regulated, oriented, and alive. Conscious experience is not a passive mirror. It is a controlled hallucination, constrained by sensory data, but fundamentally shaped by prediction. Your brain is always working ahead of your senses. Before light touches your eyes, before sound reaches your ears, before touch meets your skin, your nervous system has already prepared a model of what it expects to encounter. That model is not vague. It is detailed, emotionally weighted, and biologically motivated. It predicts threats, opportunities, faces, voices, meanings, and intentions. When sensory information arrives, it does not build your experience from scratch. It merely nudges the ongoing hallucination into alignment with what is statistically likely to be happening. This is why your perception feels stable even when the physical input is fragmented, delayed, and incomplete. Your eyes blink, your head turns, your attention shifts, and yet the world feels continuous. Your brain hides the gaps by filling them in. It invents what should be there based on what usually is there. And because those inventions are useful, you rarely notice that anything has been invented at all. The colors you see are not properties of the external world. They are interpretations created by your nervous system to help distinguish useful patterns. The warmth you feel is not a direct reading of temperature. It is your brain's best guess about how much heat is entering or leaving your body. The solidity of a table is not something your hand detects directly. It is a prediction about resistance, pressure, and stability that your brain delivers as the feeling of solid. Even your body itself is part of this hallucination. The sense of having a body, of being located somewhere, of occupying space, is not given directly by sensation. It is constructed by the brain as a model of the organism it is regulating. You do not simply feel your heartbeat. You experience a body that is yours. You do not merely register breathing. You experience being someone who is breathing. Your emotions are not reactions layered on top of perception. They are part of the hallucination itself. They shape what you see, what you hear, what you remember, and what you expect. Fear sharpens edges, amplifies sounds, and narrows attention. Calm softens perception, broadens awareness, and dampens threat. Your emotional state is not a filter placed on reality. It is a generator of reality. This is why the same situation can feel entirely different depending on your internal state. A crowded room can feel electric or suffocating. Silence can feel peaceful or unbearable. A stranger's glance can feel neutral, kind, or hostile. The sensory input has not changed. The hallucination has. The word hallucination often suggests madness, distortion, or disconnection from reality. But what your brain produces is not chaotic fantasy. It is tightly controlled by biological needs. Your hallucination must keep your body within survivable limits. It must regulate blood sugar, oxygen, temperature, hydration, and energy. It must guide you toward food, safety, shelter, and social belonging. It must minimize surprise, reduce uncertainty, and preserve continuity. Your experience of the world is shaped by what your body needs to remain alive. When you feel hunger, you are not simply detecting an empty stomach. You are experiencing a prediction that energy reserves are dropping, and that action is required. When you feel tired, you are not merely responding to muscle fatigue. You are experiencing a forecast that resources must be conserved. Your conscious feelings are management signals delivered as experience. Your brain is constantly balancing its predictions against incoming sensory information. When the difference between prediction and sensation is small, your hallucination continues smoothly. When the difference becomes large, your experience shifts. Surprise, confusion, pain, dizziness, and disorientation are signals that your hallucination needs updating. This updating process is what learning feels like. When your expectations are wrong, your brain revises its model. Over time, your hallucination becomes better tuned to the environments you inhabit. Your perception becomes more efficient, faster, and more emotionally nuanced. You begin to see what matters and ignore what does not. This also means that your reality is deeply personal. Your brain's predictions are shaped by your history, your culture, your language, your relationships, your traumas, and your beliefs. No two nervous systems run the same hallucination. Even when two people share a physical environment, they inhabit different experiential worlds. Your memories are not stored recordings. They are reconstructed hallucinations of the past. Each time you remember, your brain rebuilds the experience using current predictions. This is why memories change over time while still feeling accurate. The hallucination is updated, but the feeling of truth remains. Your sense of self is part of the hallucination. The feeling that there is a stable me inside your head is a prediction your brain uses to organize behavior and responsibility. You experience being a person because your nervous system runs a model of a person that it believes it is managing. Even your thoughts are not transparent windows into reality. They are internal simulations. Your brain rehearses actions, conversations, fears, and futures before they happen. You live inside those simulations long before you encounter the events themselves. And because your hallucination feels seamless, immediate, and emotionally convincing, it becomes indistinguishable from truth. You do not experience yourself as hallucinating reality. You experience yourself as living in it. Your brain hides its construction process so completely that the final product feels like the world itself. You are not delusional. You are biologically designed to hallucinate in a way that keeps you alive. Your conscious experience is a living prediction, continuously shaped by your body's needs and your brain's expectations, delivering a world that feels real because it is useful. Your identity feels solid, continuous, and unmistakably yours. It feels like something you carry with you through time, something that remains essentially the same even as circumstances change. You recognize yourself in old photographs. You feel responsible for promises made years ago. You feel pride, shame, and attachment to versions of yourself that no longer physically exist. This sense of permanence is not an accident. It is the result of a story your brain is exceptionally skilled at telling, and even more skilled at making you believe. From the inside, your life feels like a single unfolding narrative. There is a main character, a personal history, a set of values, a collection of goals, and a sense of direction. You experience your thoughts as belonging to you, your emotions as is expressing you, your actions as representing you. This narrative coherence creates the feeling that there is a unified person behind the experiences, a central someone who has always been there. But when you look closely, what you find is not a fixed self. You find patterns, habits of thought, emotional tendencies, behavioral reflexes, learned expectations, social roles, cultural scripts. None of these are permanent, and none of them exist in isolation. They are continuously updated by your nervous system to maintain a sense of continuity. Your brain uses memory as the glue that binds these shifting elements together. But memory is not a recording device. It is a storyteller. Each time you remember, your brain reconstructs a version of the past that fits the story you currently believe about yourself. Details that support your identity are emphasized. Details that challenge it fade. Over time, your memories gradually become less about what happened and more about who you believe you are. This is why two people can remember the same event in completely different ways and feel equally certain that they are right. Their brains are telling different stories, and those stories are anchored to different identities. The past becomes a resource used to stabilize the present self. Your habits further reinforce this narrative. Repeated behaviors become expectations. Expectations become personality traits. Personality traits become who you are. The brain learns that you respond in certain ways, prefer certain things, avoid certain risks, and seek certain rewards. These patterns become so automatic that they feel like character rather than conditioning. Language strengthens the illusion. When you say, "I am anxious," "I am confident," "I am bad at relationships," "I am not creative," you are turning temporary patterns into permanent labels. The brain absorbs these labels and uses them to predict future behavior. Over time, the labels become self-fulfilling. The story becomes the structure. Social feedback locks the story into place. Other people mirror your identity back to you. They remember your past, expect consistency, and respond to you based on who they believe you are. You learn to see yourself through their expectations. Your brain incorporates those expectations into your self-model because they help predict social outcomes. Belonging depends on being recognizable. Stability becomes safety. This is why change can feel threatening, not just emotionally, but existentially. When you attempt to behave differently, believe differently, or live differently, your internal narrative is disrupted. The brain resists not because change is impossible, but because inconsistency creates certainty. Uncertainty threatens the predictive model that keeps you oriented in the world. Your sense of being you also relies on emotional continuity. You feel like the same person today as yesterday because your emotional reactions follow familiar patterns. You care about the same people. You fear similar things. You find comfort in similar routines. These emotional echoes maintain the illusion of a continuous self, even as the underlying biology changes. Even your inner voice plays a role. The running commentary in your mind stitches moments together into a coherent storyline. It explains why you acted, what it meant, what it says about you, and what might happen next. It turns isolated events into chapters in a life story. This narrative does not require accuracy. It requires coherence. Your brain is not trying to preserve truth. It is trying to preserve meaning. Meaning allows prediction. Prediction allows survival. A consistent story is more useful than a precise one. Over time, you begin to inhabit your story as if it were a physical structure. You navigate the world through it. You interpret events through it. You choose relationships, careers, and lifestyles that reinforce it. The story becomes the lens through which you experience reality. And because the brain is remarkably good at storytelling, the illusion becomes nearly unbreakable. The self feels solid because the story is continuous. It feels real because it is emotionally reinforced. It feels permanent because it is socially confirmed. It feels personal because it is biologically useful. Yet beneath the narrative, everything is moving. Your cells regenerate, your neural connections reshape, your beliefs shift, your desires evolve. Your memories rewrite themselves. Your identity is not a thing traveling through time. It is a story being rewritten moment by moment, maintaining the feeling of continuity while everything else changes around it. When you begin to realize that the self is not a fixed object, but a living construction generated by your nervous system, something quietly radical happens to the way you interpret your life. The problems you face, the emotions you carry, the conflicts you replay, and the meanings you attach to events no longer sit on a solid, immovable foundation. They become part of a fluid internal story rather than unchangeable facts. This shift does not make your experiences less real. It makes them more understandable. Fear, for example, stops looking like a mysterious enemy that attacks you from the outside. It begins to appear as a protective prediction that your brain is generating in order to keep you safe. The pounding heart, the tight chest, the restless mind are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are signs that your nervous system believes danger is likely and is preparing you for action. When you recognize this, fear becomes less personal and more functional. You stop asking what is wrong with me and start asking what is my brain trying to protect me from. This does not make fear disappear instantly, but it changes your relationship to it. Instead of being swallowed by the emotion, you gain a small but powerful distance. You begin to notice that fear is something happening within you, not something that defines you. The same applies to sadness, anger, shame, and anxiety. These emotions feel like they reveal who you are, but they are actually signals your nervous system is using to guide behavior and maintain balance. Ego changes shape under this understanding. The drive to defend your image, to be right, to be seen a certain way, to protect your identity begins to look less like a moral issue and more like a biological reflex. Your brain is trying to preserve the internal story that keeps your world predictable. Arguments feel personal because they threaten that story. Criticism hurts because it destabilizes the model your nervous system is using to define you. Pride feels necessary because it reinforces continuity. When you see this clearly, your ego becomes easier to work with. You begin to notice that much of your defensiveness is not about truth, but about protecting the stability of your internal narrative. This awareness creates room for curiosity. You can ask whether a belief is serving you rather than whether it defines you. You can revise parts of your story without feeling as though you are erasing yourself. Suffering also changes meaning. Pain still hurts. Loss still aches. But the way you interpret these experiences shifts. You begin to see that much of suffering arises not only from events, but from the clash between your brain's predictions and the reality that unfolds. When life deviates sharply from your expectations, your nervous system experiences that mismatch as distress. The greater the mismatch, the deeper the suffering. This means that suffering is not only about what happens to you, it is about what your brain expects it to happen. When relationships end, when plans fail, when identities collapse, the pain is amplified by the fact that your internal model no longer fits the world. Your nervous system must rebuild its story of who you are and what your future looks like. Grief is not only sadness. It is the brain struggling to rewrite itself. Meaning itself becomes more flexible. Instead of being something hidden in the world waiting to be discovered, meaning becomes something your nervous system generates to guide action and reduce uncertainty. You do not find meaning. You create it through the stories your brain tells about what matters, what belongs, and what is worth protecting. This does not make meaning empty. It makes it powerful. Because if meaning is constructed, it can be revised. You can change the story you live inside. You can redefine what success looks like. You can alter what you consider failure. You can choose new narratives that reduce suffering and expand possibility. Your sense of control also evolves. You stop imagining yourself as a fixed entity battling an external world. You begin to see yourself as a living process that is constantly adapting, predicting, and learning. Change stops feeling like a betrayal of who you are and starts feeling like a natural updating of your internal model. Compassion grows from this realization. When you recognize that every person is living inside their own hallucinated reality, shaped by their own predictions, fears, and histories, judgment softens. You begin to understand that people are not simply choosing their reactions. They are acting from the models their nervous systems have learned to run. This does not excuse harm, but it deepens understanding. You also begin to treat yourself differently. Mistakes feel less like proof of inadequacy and more like data your nervous system can learn from. Emotional struggles feel less like personal failures and more like signals that your internal predictions need adjustment. Healing becomes a process of gently updating your internal story rather than fixing a broken self. Life becomes less rigid. You become less trapped by old identities, old roles, old narratives about what you are allowed to be. You realize that the person you think you are is not a finished product. It is a draft, and drafts can be revised. And in that realization, something opens. Not certainty, but possibility. Not perfection, but movement. Not a final answer, but a living, breathing freedom that comes from understanding that the self you inhabit is not a prison, but a story that can be gently rewritten as your nervous system continues its quiet work of predicting, adapting, and becoming.